Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Reimagine 2021 version 8. So this is the eighth time we're doing a virtual conference event. This time, the theme of our conference is State of the Art Chain. So we're exploring NFTs, content creators, and really the future impact it will have on things like ownership. I'm really excited to bring you a new guest today. And he's someone who has a lot of experience in the industry with some really exciting stories. Uh, Ganesh Swami, thank you for joining me here today. He's the co-founder of Covalent. Ganesh, welcome to the show. And just to start off with, I want to, how have things been for you this past year? And tell us a little bit of your story of what you were doing before being involved in the industry, and what you've been doing years prior.
Absolutely. Thanks, Roshan, for that warm welcome. Ganesh Swami here. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Covalent. So before crypto, before all of this stuff, I was a physicist by training, and I used to work on cancer drugs. So building in the pharmaceutical industry. And that was fun. That was challenging. That was world-changing. But for me, that was too slow. It took about 5 years to get a prototype drug out into the market. And while I was seeing my friends starting companies, getting funded, and even going through an acquisition or an exit in 18 months or less. So I was kind of missing that fast pace. So I decided to pivot my career away from the physical sciences to something more fast paced. So this is where I got into the big data space. So I've been doing big data systems for the last decade. About 3 years ago, we found this opportunity that blockchains are cool and all, but for it to garner enterprise adoption, it has to speak to existing investments. And these investments could be the talent, because enterprises are not going to retrain their people. It could be the processes. They're not going to change their processes. And existing tooling. It has to talk to your existing applications like Excel and Power BI and Tableau. These are some investments that enterprises have done. So if you look at an enterprise setting, there's always a legacy piece of infrastructure that's been running and chugging along for decades. And there's no reason to change it if it's not broken. So that was the core idea. We built out the prototype for Covalent at a hackathon, ended up winning that hackathon, and started to build a company around it to commercialize this technology. So that is Covalent. The word covalent comes from covalent bonds. My apologies if it brings back harsh memories from high school, but that's where it is. So it's this binding agent between centralized systems and decentralized systems. So that's where the analogy comes from. So we have a lot of fun with our branding. If you look at our logo, those two dots are orbitals. If you look at our homepage, all of those lines is a Lorentz attractor. Our community ambassador program is called the Covalent Alchemists. They're all alchemists. So everything is like a chemistry, physics related theme. So that's Covalent. My co-founder Levi is a database engineer, worked at CouchDB at IBM. I'm a database engineer myself, lots of experience in the big data space. So yeah, we started the company fall of 2017, probably the worst time to start a company, because little did we know that the bear market would hit us in the face. So 2018, 2019, to be honest, nothing was going on. Just the two of us coming in, slinging some code, polishing the product, building. It was a lot of fun. I learned a lot. But at some point as a startup, you had to figure out some path to growth, either customers, revenue, traction, something of that sort. So by late 2019, I was starting to get a little disillusioned. This is when I went to climb Mount Everest, the base camp, and then try to get some perspective. And I came back and said, hey, you know what? Let's use our own data to figure out what's going on with the blockchain, right? What is going on? Like, where's the activity? Where's the heat? Let's go after that. And so we crunched some numbers and said, okay, let's give it 3 months. But then 2020 hit, and DeFi started to blow up. So I would say our timing was good, was great. And we started closing customers left, right, and center. Suddenly we found ourselves profitable. And suddenly we found that we could not keep up with the customer demand. And this is when we went out to raise a round of venture funding, which is our first funding, which was last summer. And then we have since closed 2 more rounds of funding. So today, the team, we've grown a lot in the last 8 months, from a team of 2 to a team of 30. So Covalent is 30 people today. The number of customers we have is just 4 or 5, which was last summer, to over 100, including all the top players like 0x, Zerion, Chain Guardians, Ethermon, so on. the number of blockchains we support and index has gone from just Ethereum to 8 blockchains today. So that's a short summary of what has happened over the last couple of years. So yeah, happy to share more and dig into what is Covalent and what we offer to the industry, and why this category of data middleware companies are very interesting from a positioning standpoint.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing your background and story. I always find it interesting because, like, I think you came from seeing a lot of inefficiencies in traditional systems, and I think that's one thing that's great about crypto and the whole blockchain industry. A lot of these tools and like public blockchains that are available, they're always on, and the rate that things get better is just very, very high, and it gets very, very fast. I want to dive a little bit deeper into something that you said, and congrats on your recent raise. I think it's pretty interesting. So tell me a little bit more about some of the interesting features that Covalent provides, and that demand that you're talking about. Can you actually see that in real time? Do you think this benefits B2B companies?
Absolutely. So what has happened? So let me talk about why a company like Covalent, our category is a breakout category. So in crypto, you have a few breakout categories. First is the trading venue. So companies like Coinbase and Binance. Obviously, Coinbase with going public a couple of weeks ago is huge. Binance being a multi-billion-dollar company is also is no news to anyone. The second being custodians who hold custody of your assets, because institutions are not going to self-custody. The data layer is critical because all the data is public on the blockchain, but you can't actually get this out. Yes, you can go to Etherscan, but it doesn't have all the information. There's information on the blockchain that you can't even see on Etherscan that Covalent provides. So this is why this category of companies in this space is so important. So you can have there are lots of companies, like Chain Analysis is an example that does forensics analysis, and they've raised over $200 million over the last couple of months. So there's companies in this category, and Covalent is one of those companies. So with regards to what is going on the blockchain, the beauty of the blockchain is that it's the central nervous system of your financial or your art or whatever the business process is actually all public, and it's immutable, which means it cannot be tampered with. And this is crucial because if you look at the expense that any enterprise or any business, it's mostly in the data integration. It's getting these CSV files, making sure there are no errors, making sure they're compatible with existing systems. If there's a person on the other end who's entering the data by hand, there's lots of errors. It's a very complicated system. And if you look at the traditional enterprise system, these data pipeline companies are all are worth billions of dollars, because this is a crucial problem. You cannot have an error in an enterprise data pipeline or in a reporting system. There might be huge penalties and huge regulatory concerns just because of that. So blockchain solves all of that stuff, because the data, the schema, the definition of the data, nothing can change. Once it's put on the blockchain, it's there forever. So businesses find a lot of value from this, from a motion perspective, as in the data is flowing from point A to point B. But eventually, the process itself will move to the blockchain. So let me tell you why this is important. We've gone through digitization of assets, right? So if you look at the invoices, so if I were to send you an invoice, I would send you a PDF. But that's still just a digital version of an analog service. You still have an invoice number, you still have accounts receivable and payable. All of those are analog processes. But what would be magical, and which is where the world is heading towards, is having true digitization, which means the invoice itself lives on the blockchain. And this is powerful because now you can pool all of these invoices and do other kinds of things. You can get a loan against these invoices. You can do lots of interesting things, especially with DeFi being composable. So that's what is exciting and what is very futuristic when it comes to the blockchain.
Yeah, you're definitely right about it unlocking like new buckets of value that just haven't been able to be unlocked before. And I think also that it's interesting that this like with these decentralized blockchains, there's so much more data that's being produced, but I definitely agree that it's not being categorized, or you can't make the same sense of it. So kind of going into some recent developments that you've been doing, I think it's super interesting because you sort of have reasons as to why you did them. So I know you recently launched the mainnet of Covalent. So can you tell me a little bit about what this mainnet launch means to you, and even why do it? Like, why is it significant?
Sure. One of the things that marks our team at Covalent differently is that we're product and traction focused entrepreneurs, which means we identify a problem and then go solve that problem, and then traction, and then figure out the rest of the pieces. Unlike a lot of the 2017 ICOs, which many of us know that didn't really pan out even after raising tens of millions of dollars. So what we did is we went out and built a traditional centralized SaaS solution to bring data availability to the blockchain. So we built a centralized API, a centralized service. All of the systems are under our control. But what has happened over the last year is, as we've gotten more and more traction, Covalent now becomes a central point of failure, which means that if someone were to hack us, if our systems were to go down, if someone tampered with our data sets, then that would mean basically a big portion of the industry would go dark. So what we've done is we have elevated Covalent to become now a public good. So the Covalent network is a decentralized network that is run by parties who are completely unknown to each other. So in theory, you can just go and participate in the Covalent network without asking for anyone's permission and start serving these indices as queries. So that's really what the magic of this new infrastructure is. So it becomes a public good that anyone can query data from. So the first step towards that fully decentralized vision was taken last night with the launch of our mainnet. So if you go to our block explorer, which is cqtscan.com, which will go live later today, or by the time you hear this podcast, it'll be live. CQT is the Covalent Query Token, so CQT scan. You can see all of the blocks across dozens of blockchains being indexed into this giant mesh public utility that anyone can query from. So that's really the magic of this decentralized network. So I'm very excited for this because I think now we've gone from a small project, which is going to benefit the shareholders of Covalent, to something that the entire ecosystem can benefit. Anyone can participate. Anyone can contribute. So it's part of crypto, as opposed to us providing us as an external party. So it's definitely very momentous in our firm's and our project's history.
Yeah, and the community is a big part, and congrats on launching your new public sale. That's really exciting. I think it's a good way for community members to participate. And kind of while we're on that topic, something that a lot of people have been participating in the crypto and blockchain industry has just been NFTs, right? The NFT craze. So why do you think, actually, let me back up a second. First, what can you tell me about how much, I guess, time and consideration your company currently puts in NFTs? Like, what does NFTs mean for you? And I think you also have an interesting story. I'll let you mention the name of who you know.
Absolutely. So NFTs. NFTs has taken up all of our airtime in the first quarter of this year, for good or for bad. I think it's good because it's brought a lot of attention to it. So let's first talk about NFTs. They've been around for a while. They've been around even before CryptoKitties. There are projects out there like CryptoPunks, which have launched an NFT, not fully compliant, but they are NFTs for all you can consider. So CryptoKitties really made it popular because it brought in this whole new avenue of collectibles. And then 2018, 2019 was basically that. 2020, the DeFi craze took over. And then towards the end of 2020, I think a couple of things have happened. There's a lot of people who've made a lot of wealth, personal wealth from DeFi, because a lot of these tokens have, basically gone 10 to 50x pretty much anyone who's made investments last summer is doing pretty well financially. So there's a lot of capital that is waiting to invest in entertainment. So when Q1 came around, there were just like one by one projects were starting to release NFTs. Artists were coming out of the woodwork to release NFTs. My firm Covalent, we've issued a couple of NFTs, and this is really, really interesting. So there are a couple of things here. One is that it's a piece of history. So you're capturing a piece of history. That is really, really cool. So Covalent runs a couple of big data competitions. It's called Dungeons and Data. And for the winners, we give out an NFT, and that's a limited set, limited edition. So it's a part of history. The second thing is like a collectible, and collecting rare items. This has been going on for generations. It's not specific to crypto or NFTs or anything of that sort, but people love collecting things and you can see that with NBA Top Shot. The third thing is this collectibles, and I would say as a source of investment. So maybe that's not a deal, but something that a lot of people don't know is that in the art world, art as a category of investment, as an asset class, is quite lucrative. So people can invest in art. It's just not very liquid, and there are other issues. I mean, you physically have to move pieces of art around. But in the NFT world, it's the same kind of idea. So if you're able to create a basket of NFTs, that could be quite a lucrative investment portfolio. So that is also bringing in a lot of interest. So this is what we're seeing with NFT and why all the craziness. Now, the flip side of this is who is purchasing these NFTs. So our firm, Covalent, has a research desk that we call Alpha Alarm, and we put out a lot of data analytics, mostly charts. So we put out a chart every day that talks about the different facets of the crypto industry. And what we found is twofold. I think two questions. One is that, yes, there's a lot of supply of NFTs. A lot of art is being put on the blockchain. And it's not just art, it's also music, it's all kinds of things. But who is buying them? Is it the same set of people, the same wallets that are participating in these sales? And the answer, unfortunately, what we found is that it's just 2,000 wallets that accounts for 80% of the sales that's going on, at least on Ethereum, which is with OpenSea and Rarible. So that's quite unfortunate. So it's the same set of people who are participating. The second thing I would say is interesting is that is it attracting a new source of buyers? We unfortunately don't have data on the Flow blockchain, but I think what Flow is doing with NBA Top Shot is very, very interesting. It's attracting a new source of buyers, but it's questionable if these new source of buyers actually care about the ethos of crypto, which is decentralization, property rights, hardware wallets, security, self-custody, those things that matter a lot to the current crypto core may not necessarily be the case for these newer set of buyers. So there's lots of conflicting ideas here, which is very interesting to see pan out over the next couple of months. To your other question, I had the chance to run past who is now today known as Covalent. He's a friend, and we were supposed to grab dinner in Denver last year. For good or for bad, we missed. And then he actually just messaged me last weekend and said, "Hey man, I have a bone to pick with you." And then I had to Google what a bone to pick with me is because is he going to like short my company's token? What is this? What's going on? So for those of you who don't know, Covalent recently purchased the Beeple art on Christie's for $69 million. And this is a pretty big deal. And I think what is interesting is Covalent is his pseudonym. Of course, now everyone knows that he's Vignesh, and his team Metapurse, the fund that he runs, has lots of investments. But Vignesh as a person is an amazing guy. So he's always approachable. Way back, he went all into the Ethereum ICO. And that shows, like, I wish I had the conviction that he has about this space. And he did the same thing with Polkadot, and now he has lots of infrastructure investments. And the kinds of things that Covalent and Metapurse, which is his fund, the kinds of things we are trying to think about is, I think as an industry, we are not pushing the boundaries experimentation. We're not doing enough to push what's possible. Like there's so much you can do with 3D, with AR, VR, NFTs, all kinds of things. So hopefully in the next few months, we're able to announce some of the things that we're planning to work on. But yeah, so Metacoven, you can read up on him. You can read up his story. He doesn't own a car. He's a very down-to-earth, humble guy. I didn't even know personally that he was like loaded, but that's the kind of guy he is. So I'm proud to call him a friend, and he's a great source of inspiration for a lot of people who are just starting out in this industry.
Yeah, and I think that just represents the great ethos that I think people in crypto have, that it's not really about the money or even adoption in some cases. There's many people out there that see a lot of these things we're talking about today as tools, including large amounts of data. Many people see it as tools against the current financial system where everything's kind of locked behind closed doors. And those are some interesting stories about NFTs for sure. And I'm sure for everyone watching this, some people might be new. What do you personally, what do you believe is the driving interest for everyday people getting into NFTs? That we saw this large group of people in the last year come in. So what do you think the difference between that and some of the other companies that are looking at it from a utility standpoint, whether it's these different sports teams, issuing different NFTs? Like, do you think they're just two different types of buyers?
I think so. I think it's very interesting because it's like, I would say it's like MP3s. When MP3s were coming out for the first time, it was new, it was novel, but I'm sure there are people out there who said you can pry my Walkman from my cold dead hands, right? Because it's part of their thing. And then there's this newfangled technology. So I think NFT always has an allure of new technology. I don't understand, but I can see it visually. Visual things definitely speak to a lot more people than the crypto stuff. The crypto stuff is pretty hardcore. Setting up the wallet and all of that is very difficult. So I would say that's definitely what has changed. Even today, even though I'm in the space, I don't understand a lot of the DeFi products. They've become very, very complicated. So if I'm not able to understand DeFi, then I'm sure there's a large barrier to entry for retail adoption. But NFTs is not the same, right? You can have an NFT. It's not dissimilar to the Tamagotchis that we had 15, 20 years ago, where you had this pet rock that you're catering to and you're letting it grow and you're part of its life. I think NFTs are kind of the same. With regards to the buyers, I think from a society, being a part of something as a true shareholder is something that is important. I think it's a sense of belonging. It's a sense of community. It's a sense of ownership. And we've seen that ourselves, right? So with Covalent, as a SaaS product is okay. We were doing pretty well. We were profitable. We were revenue generating, and we were growing, which is very, very interesting from a crypto perspective. But the minute we decided to tokenize our service and share the ownership of Covalent with the community, suddenly that activated something in people's minds. Now there are our community is like thousands of people. And thousands of people that have gone through a full recruitment process. So we have a special deal called Covalent Alchemists, and they do tasks for us. They do translations. They do video webinars, and they do all kinds of things for us. And they all have access to the token. We airdrop tokens to all of them. So that has really unlocked a new source of energy. So I think that's what NFTs are, right? If you take the NFT technology, now suddenly, if you tokenize an NFT, that is now accessible to a lot more people. You can see this with People Pleaser. So People Pleaser is an artist from Asia, and she built the Uniswap promo video, right? She's a 3D artist. So that's very interesting. But what she decided is she wanted to sell this piece of art as an NFT and donate the proceeds to charity. And so she put it out for, I think, I think like $15,000, $20,000. And then there was a whale who believed in her and believed in her in the cause and bumped it up to $100,000. But then what happened is out of nowhere, a DAO got created and they were able to fractionalize that DAO. And because a lot more people were able to participate, the total selling price was $500,000. Right, so we started at $10,000 and finally sold for $500,000 because there were 500 people who pitched in a little, right, and they're a part of this thing. So I think that unlocks new waves of participating. It attracts a new source of buyers into the NFTs, which has never been done before. So I think that's what the novelty of this thing is. So it has the potential of taking crypto in a completely different era, different direction, which I think overall is healthy for crypto. We have to cross the chasm at some point.
Yeah, and we need both ends of the spectrum. I think it's just interesting that you have all these other products that hardcore crypto people are always pushing, but in the end, it's something that's more, social, and I think people can actually visualize like NFTs versus a lot of this other stuff. You can't even visualize. So I want to quickly cover, some of your thoughts on some of the issues in NFTs, and also some areas where you think there's stagnation, maybe like where should we, what are some really really cool examples of things you'd like to see, even if they're not practical, like where should we be pushing the bound?
Yeah, so let's start with some of the problems with NFTs. One of the issues with NFTs is that not all data is on chain, which means there's always, like, for example, the asset API, the actual image or the video behind an NFT is not on the blockchain. It's just too expensive. The blockchain is not a storage mechanism, right? So these APIs that hold these NFTs can disappear at any point. They're just private APIs. And so you might have access to an NFT, but you can't actually see what that NFT is if that private API were to go down. So I think that's a big risk. It's okay today because the industry is so new, but long term, if you think of this as a collectible that you hold onto for the rest of your life, if that API were to go down, there's no way to recover what was behind that API. I think that's something that can torpedo the adoption of NFTs. That's a big problem. The second thing I would say is that there's a lot of experimentation going on with fractionalization. So creating a basket of NFTs and then fractionalizing it so that you offer this and then offer cash flows. And these are, I'm not a lawyer, so don't quote me on this, but these can be securities. So there are definitely legal risks with the experimentation. So which may not matter in other parts of the world, but definitely in the Western world, it's an issue. So people do need to be careful on how they securitize these assets. What I really find fascinating, which I think there should be more experimentation, is the equivalent of ISAs, which are the income share agreements. So we've seen income share agreements in the traditional world where you're able to front a loan to a student and fund their schooling, and then you garnish the wages over the next 6-7 years beyond a certain limit. So the incentives are aligned because you're funding a student. So you can see programs like Lambda School, which is funding a computer science education, and then the student then pays off, I think, 10% of the loan over the next 6-7 years. And what's magical about this is you can now pool all of the debt that the students have, and then sell it as an asset because it's a future revenue stream. So that's very, very interesting. And now I think that should be brought to the blockchain, and that should be brought in a way where the funding goes towards the artists. So the thing about artists is that there's a small number of people who make a lot of money, and the long tail don't make anything at all. But I think if you have more and more people who are having access to the latest tools and the latest knowledge and are able to level up their art, I think that's very, very interesting. So that is an area of experimentation that some of my colleagues are actively looking at. So I think there's going to be I'm sure there's going to be some experiments on those along those directions.
Yeah, I think that's pretty interesting. Not a lot of people have covered some of the problems you talked about. I think a lot of people think that all this stuff is just on the blockchain, and that's true. The reality is it's not all on the blockchain. I think NFTs make the best use of some of the blockchain properties, for sure. And kind of going a little bit away from NFTs and back to Covalent, what are some of the interesting business use cases you're excited about with Covalent? Like you have kind of the insider scoop on what these businesses are interested in, like B2B solutions. So, what can you tell us about what you're seeing, a change in activity?
Absolutely. So before we go into what the future is, let's talk about what Covalent is today. So Covalent offers a unified API that can pull out balances in position and historical granular transaction activity across 8 different blockchains. So we have over 100 customers in the space, including all the top names like 0x and Zerion and NFTX and Chain Guardians and Ethermon, lots of use cases. So our use cases are broken down into a bunch of buckets. So we have exchanges, we have taxation, we have investor dashboards, we have NFT related pricing valuation models, and then a long tail of use cases that you can't really categorize. So Prism.xyz is like a social trading application that's completely built on Covalent. You have like DAO Maker that is like a funding source, all kinds of use cases. So that is what Covalent is today. And what is very interesting right now is that a lot of the status quo is being challenged. A good example here is that PancakeSwap, which is the Uniswap clone that is on Binance Smart Chain, actually has more liquidity and more transaction volume than the original Uniswap. So this is mind-blowing to a lot of people. And this is primarily because they're closely related to the Binance ecosystem, and Binance has a huge number of retail traders. And Pancake, because it's on the Binance Smart Chain, the gas fees is a fraction of what you would see on Ethereum. So therefore, they're just able to attract all of that liquidity. Now, whether that's within the ethos of decentralization and censorship resistant and permissionless, I don't know. It's not my place to take, but it's very interesting to see what's happening there. So what has happened is because of the traction that all these other blockchains are seeing, like Polygon and Binance Smart Chain and Avalanche and Phantom, of course, Ethereum Mainnet, and then in the summer, we're going to see all these rollups like, Optimistic Rollup and ZK Sync. And it's just that the world is going to get very, very complicated. What we're seeing is the need for new kinds of solutions to problems that didn't exist last year. A good example here is just assets that are being transferred between different blockchains. The Covalent token is an ERC20 token that lives on Ethereum, but there's no way for this token to participate in a protocol on the Binance Smart Chain ecosystem. So I think there's a need for bridges, non-custodial bridges, because I'm not willing to trust another third party with my assets. Why would I? That is able to bridge these assets. I think there's a need for that. There's no clear solution there. The second thing is, if an asset like Covalent token goes from Ethereum to Binance, Binance to Matic, Matic back to Ethereum, it's not clear if that is the same asset, right? So you might have taxable consequences along those bridges. So there's just this whole can of worms that we have opened up, because we all have built with an assumption that there's only one blockchain and all the traction is on this one blockchain. But actually, no, I think the world is a lot more vibrant, a lot more diverse, and people need different solutions on different ends of the spectrum. So I think these are some problems that we're seeing with the multi-chain future. The other challenge, I would say, is the multitude of ways of using Bitcoin on Ethereum. So Bitcoin by itself is not useful. It's definitely, Bitcoin as a payment option is dead. That experiment has failed. No one is going to spend Bitcoin. It doesn't make any sense. So what you want to do is you want to actually bring it onto Ethereum and then use Bitcoin as a collateral to take out a loan or something of that nature. So there are now multiple ways to get Bitcoin on Ethereum. So I think from a pricing, from an understanding, from a risk perspective, how you bring Bitcoin onto Ethereum matters. And people are going to pick different choices, and you're going to see, fragmentation in the downstream services that take Bitcoin. So that's what comes to mind. I think the world is moving so fast, especially in crypto, and there'll be a new thing. I would say, in 2 weeks, it's hard to keep up.
Yeah, there's like a new thing in our industry launching almost every single day. And I love how you covered kind of usability and participation, right? That's so important these days. what do you think, what's two of your ethos coming from kind of like a development or building perspective? Like, how do we make these NFTs or these applications better? Like, do you think we should hide some of the things, or are you more of the type where you think we need more transparency even for the people that are not crypto native?
I think the world will fragment into two use cases. I think there's room for both, but I much prefer to teach people the new way of thinking things rather than masking over the subtleties of blockchain-based applications. People need to understand the value of self-custody. Right now, we've just been trained, almost pigeonholed into a mode of thinking where self-custody is not even an option. It's not an option, right? You're even from your stock to the gold bars that you have, whatever your investments are, you're always giving up custody to a custodian. That's how the traditional world works. So there's an option that you can self-custody, which may not necessarily be the best, but it is an option. Having that option is very powerful. I think people need to be educated on why this matters. So crypto has that advantage that you're coming in with a blank slate. So I would say people, not everyone is going to get it. Not everyone is going to appreciate it. It took me a couple of years for me to understand the value of decentralization and why it matters. But I would say there's definitely, I would much prefer the option where people are exposed to the internals and are able to realize what's going on. So I have another thesis here, which is what drives Covalent. So if you think about what has happened in society, or think back to 100 years ago, if you wanted to shift or crank start your car, you had to call in a mechanic. A mechanic comes in and then physically cranks your car up. But what has happened today is that you can start your car from your smartphone. It's really that simple, right? The usability is through the roof. But today, if you look at data analysis, that's been outsourced. We rely on politicians and we rely on the press to tell us the narratives and tell us the stories on what the data means. This is why there's so much confusion when it comes to politics, to the COVID numbers or the vaccine numbers. It's just a huge mess. Society is not able to make up its mind, right? Do we have shutdowns? Do we wear masks after the vaccination? Like, it's just unknowns, right? So what I think should happen is every person needs to understand and come to their own conclusion after understanding the data. So we have a program that teaches people how to crunch the data. So this is along the same lines. Do we expose people to the internals of crypto, like the censorship, the decentralization ethos, the custody aspect, or do we just provide a traditional Venmo-like experience and it's crypto under the hood? So I think there is an answer to both. I think that the Venmo-like experience definitely will appeal to a mainstream audience. It'll be faster growth, but it's kind of like missing the point, right? If you're moving fast towards the wrong target, doesn't matter where you're going. So that's really my question.
Yeah, and thank you so much for our audience for kind of breaking two of those things down, because I think that's what a lot of people in the industry talk about, kind of like design principles. And it's interesting to know, like, you have these couple of strong ethos, and then that kind of bleeds into your story and everything you've done. To kind of end things off, I want to give you a chance to tell people, how can they get involved with the public sale? Like, what can, how can they reach out to you and your team? And also tell us a little bit about where do you think Covalent is going in the future, just 3 to 6 months out? I know you're kind of decentralizing more and more, right?
Absolutely. So Covalent, it's probably late by the time you listen to this podcast, but at the end of April, we had a public sale on CoinList. So unfortunately not open to Canadians or Americans. And this is the first time that we're offering the Covalent query token, CQT, to the retail audience. And we've seen a lot of interest in the public sale. Covalent is the first project out there that's a non-layer one project. So all of the other CoinList sales has been other layer one blockchains like Casper and Mina and Near Protocol and Flow Protocol and so on. So Covalent is a data middleware project, so that's getting people excited. We've seen over 400,000 people already registered for the sale, which is pretty crazy in the grand scheme of things on how much the interest is. The token will be trading on popular trading venues later this year, so definitely keep an eye out. It's called CQT. If you want to keep in touch with us, I think the best place is to go to our website. It's covalenthq.com, covalenthq.com. So you can use the product. It's a free product to use. You can use the API if you're a developer. If you're non-technical and you want to participate in a community, definitely check out the Covalent Alchemist program, which is a growth and leadership program. And then we are very active on social media, very active on YouTube. So we do all these webinars, podcasts. So yeah, generally we're out in the open, and I usually try to respond to every single email that comes in. So you can definitely email me at ganesh@covalenthq.com.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you so much, Ganesh, for your time here. It was really exciting to hear about your story and how dedicated you are to the space with a lot of these insider stories, like with MetaCoven. And as usual, I'll let you all tune back into Reimagine 2021. We're here to bring you new interviews every month and explore deep stories in the space. Thank you, Ganesh.
Thank you, Roshan. It was a pleasure.